Honestly, a big part is we have to look at your should path. I call it the should path, but it's that path that you've been conditioned to believe that you're supposed to do that actually isn't aligned. I think so many of us don't realize how much our story is something we beat ourselves up about. I see that there's this inner Empress that lives within us, and she is our most sovereign self. She just is completely embodied in her self-worth. It's an identity. I think that's a big thing for a lot of us women as well, it's creating wealth. It's not, I don't even really say making it, I always say creating it.
In what contexts? Where are you experiencing pleasure as you've just described it?
People want to be strong so that people invest in them.
What is it that I have to do in order to experience that thing?
It's difficult to understand where the pelvic floor is.
Hello, Alexia. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so excited to speak to you because of what you specialize in, and I can't wait to bring this conversation to our audience.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Taz. It's so good to first and foremost actually see you.
Yeah.
It's been a minute, and to just be in this space, I love what you share about. I love the connection you create with your community. I love what you stand for. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. It's weird though with social media, you don't feel like you've not seen someone in that long. I feel like I've been seeing you dancing around, doing everything.
I know, it's true. Well, and it's amazing now with these different content pieces, because I always felt like part of my personality couldn't be known in a certain way, just because I always have been very expressive. And you do dance, but I feel like I have my own kind of dance vibe. So it's fun to actually have these mediums where we get to know each other in a different way and kind of see all of our facets.
Yeah, I love watching your stuff. So where I wanted to start today, I wanted to ask you, what do most women come to you? What are they struggling with when they come to you? They're either thinking of starting a business or they're in a business. What is the most common or some of the most common issues that they come to you with?
Yeah, so most of my women are ambitious. There is this desire to stand for something more. I think probably because of my background, I always feel like we naturally attract people who in some ways have some of our own energetic. And so I naturally feel like I attract the very ambitious woman who knows she desires more, who knows she's here to do something big, who looks at the world and is like, oh my gosh, there's so much I care about that I want to see change. And so it's a sense of I have this ambition, and a lot of them have been, leading corporate lives or have been really in the hustle culture very heavily. And they're at this moment of it's not working, I feel stuck, and they desire purpose. So I would say a lot of it is this desire for purpose and this reconnection to actually enjoying their journey. There's this hunger, I would say.
All right. And do you find a specific age where women start having these realizations, or is it different for everyone on their journey?
This has surprised me, because I feel especially when I first started my business, it was okay, who is your, are you targeting millennials? Are you targeting Gen Z? It was that energy. I have women of all ages. Oh, wow. So I have women ranging from 20 to 60.
Oh, wow.
So, and I'm watching, because I think there's just now, as women, we're redefining success. So it's these women who are at that transition point where maybe they've even had a full corporate career, and they're like, you know what, I want to leave my legacy. There's more I'm here to share. I've learned so much. I want to take all the wisdom and do a different project, or I want to go online. I want to do it in a different way. So it's actually surprised me that it's actually not even about age anymore. It's really about where you're at and this level of desire that comes in.
I think that's pretty cool. Also because something that I've struggled with is feeling like I'm late for life, mm-hmm. Like I'm showing up late. Mm-hmm. So I think that's cool to hear that people are changing paths at different ages, and maybe seasons work differently for different people. I think that kind of hopefully takes the pressure off some people listening to that. And so what is your first step when women come to you and they're saying they want more purpose, they want to leave a legacy, they want more? What is the first step? What do you do with them?
Honestly, a big part is we have to look at your should path. I call it the should path, but it's that path that you've been conditioned to believe that you're supposed to do that actually isn't aligned. So as much as I love to go in vision, I feel like you have to know where your current reality is in a way. And I think a lot of people want to go straight into vision. Even in business, it's talk about your business vision, but there's so many nuggets that you've picked up along the way that led you to today. I always think as a free spirit and traveler, if I was going to fly to Bali tomorrow, and that was my vision, to go to Bali, but I didn't know if I was flying out of Cape Town or if I was flying out of LA, it'd be a very different journey. And so I think we have to really start at like, what has led you to today? Get really clear about like what actually isn't working. What are these belief systems? What have you been told you should do or how you should be? I also think a big part of that is I have these 5 success saboteurs, and I call them roles, because I feel like we can tune into identity, but it's these roles we've been told. Many of us relate to busy girl or the good girl, the yes girl, the cool girl, and then the last one is the guarded girl. But it's like, I really love to see kind of like, where can we break free from a lot of the like entanglements, ways we've been limited to think we can be who we are in the depths of our power, and actually like outline even on your career or in your love life or in your wealth journey, like what actually is what you've been told you should want versus what is your truth. So I really actually think it's important to first start off with like, where's that saboteur playing and where's our current reality? And then I love to go into vision after that.
All right. And that's so interesting. And then when you are on this should path, it's easy to say this in words, but this is something that is deeply ingrained, I feel. So what are the techniques that you use to start getting people out of, once they have said, okay, this is where I am, how do you start breaking that down or redefining that? I feel like it's a lot easier said than done, right?
So like in business, I think a huge part of this is what I would call the brand story journey of really actually looking at your story. So say you want to start a business or you want to make a career shift or you want to do any change in your life. I think so many of us don't realize how much our story is something we beat ourselves up about. There's so many like quotes mistakes that we still hold on to, and because of one mistake we don't feel like we're deserving or worthy or won't go for the risk again. And so what I find is actually like going through a whole brand story, and I think this is something I obviously do a lot with entrepreneurs, so that way they can really honor that in their business, but honestly for anybody, like owning your story as any leader, as a mother, as in any capacity, as a community creator, in like any capacity is so big, because it's not just knowing your story that matters, and like kind of going back and in a lot of ways redefining moments. Because I think, I love that Rumi quote where it's like, the wound is where the light enters. And I know for myself, a big part of my own journey was realizing that actually so many of my gifts and the wisdom I'm here to share in the world is actually in many ways linked to some moments where I was put like completely fell to the ground in some of my deepest, darkest moments. Yeah. So I think it's actually going through that journey of actually seeing what has led you to today, and then seeing so much of your wisdom. And something I really stand for, which I feel like you would align with, and actually I do know you align with because of your brand, is in today's world, there's a lot about knowledge and information. Wisdom is really the difference. And our stories hold a lot of wisdom, I find.
And how would you define wisdom?
To me, it's embodied knowledge.
Yes.
So it's like you learn things, but we can feel when someone tells us something because they just like heard a quote once versus, and I think we see this a lot in Instagram world a lot, where it's like you can feel there's a difference when someone shares something with you where they've heard something, and then when they tell the story of embodiment. Yeah. So that's wisdom to me. It's like the embodied knowledge.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like a knowing, and it's just, it's like a deeper knowing, and you have that feeling. It's actually hard for me to put into words. That's why I asked you. But I love that idea of what you're saying about your brand story. I recently actually did this exercise. So it's funny that you say it, and it was so powerful. And it's definitely something that I would encourage women to do, even if you're not building a business. Yeah. For me, it was an exercise that I had learnt about, and I thought, okay, let me do this. And just writing out my story and really seeing those points, those pivotal moments, and like you say, reframing them and realizing how that moment has impacted my whole life, which I had never realized before. And then actually seeing the power in it and changing that moment from something that I regretted or wished hadn't happened to realizing I wouldn't be here without that moment. So I think that, for anybody, not just in a business sense, but to actually write down your story, go through it, and those moments will always stick out to you. And sometimes just to see it on paper makes such a difference. So I love that idea.
And it's your connection point too.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, that's the moment that someone really feels like they can see you. Because as leaders, there's a power to our wisdom, our expertise, but it's that owning of those moments of getting down and getting back up that I also think gives us a lot of trust in ourselves and deep self-belief of like, hey, I've fallen before and I got myself back up, or I still found abundance in ways I didn't expect through that experience, that I think it also helps you to really just realize how strong you actually are and how resilient you are. And so that any risk you're wanting to take in your current life, you feel much more capable and competent to do so.
Yeah, because you've been through something like that, or possibly even more challenging before. And I'm thinking now about when you go into your story, it's quite a vulnerable thing to do. Even if you're not sharing it, it feels quite vulnerable. And then if you're choosing to share that, it's even more. Do you find that a lot of your clients struggle with this vulnerability and not wanting to show that messy side of ourselves, the time that we struggled, and how do you help them move through that?
It is that support. It is trust. I think this is why I do think in my line of work, that's why I think in a lot of ways that's a big area I focus on in brand, because I can see how hard it is to see that in ourselves. As much as people think it isn't even their mistakes, to see your own power, to really own your wisdom, especially as women, I think it's a courageous act. I think to even allow yourself to go into some of the spaces that we often think are going to cause a lot of pain and how to walk through it. So I think for me, a lot of it is that deep trust. I find with my clients, there's just this deep sense of, hey, we're in this together. I've got you. Let's walk. And there's an energy of also being held. Like, I think even for myself, like, I've found my guides, my teachers, my coaches, my mentors to help me, because even if I know the process for myself, I love and I know the impact when someone else walks it with me, because there's blind spots they can help me see. Yeah. There's an energy they hold, so it's not me by myself. So that's even if you find a friend or someone, but I find that it's actually really helpful to not do that. Like, you want to have some self-reflection, but then having that ability to really share and be seen and open up. And for some people also vocalizing is a really powerful tool versus just writing. So finding the way that also supports you and actually getting to some of those places and actually having someone who's not afraid. Find the people in your life who are not afraid to go deep. I think that is one of my biggest strengths is I am here for the deep talks. Yeah. So people are like, how did you even get to that place? Because I'm watching and I'm like, I'm just so on the never-ending journey to get to the depth of the truth. And so for me, I think that's why it like what comes through is so much magic, just because I'm not afraid to be there with you and then to alchemize it. To me, it's very much about that alchemy of like taking something that hasn't necessarily been, in your words, beautiful or one of your hardest moments, but then really through that process of being seen, being witnessed, and then realizing what is the learning, what is the truth, what is the wisdom, and walking. It's like it gives you gold to walk with forward.
And for those women who are looking for a mentor or a coach, what are the qualities you feel you should look for in a coach, and what should you avoid?
I would say energy is the number one thing to pay attention to. Even more than what their expertise is, you need someone who in their presence, they make you believe more in yourself. Like, I would say in anything I'm watching with my clients is I may have someone who, because I've had to say no, or we just weren't aligned, because for me that alignment is very important in integrity for myself and my experience and for anyone who comes into my world. I think for anyone, I've also done it where I've bought the courses or bought the programs just because I wanted this specific knowledge, and because I didn't honestly have a great energetic connection to the person or to their teaching style, it's not the content, it's not the wisdom I talk about. It's not the one that really sat with me in a powerful way. Whereas when you're around someone who just being in their presence, it's a body experience. It's, the feminine. There's something in the feminine that they activate in you when they speak. It opens, it makes you expand your chest. It makes you believe bigger. I think that's what I look for when I'm saying to anyone is like, really look for someone who ignites something in you in a big way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's more of a feeling. And I think also you want someone who will also challenge you at the right time. So not someone who is like only supportive all the time, but someone who will call you out on those things, who will say that you are falling back into the same patterns here. And it's not always what we want to hear. So it's like it's a fine balance to get right.
I would say, and one other thing, it's like there has to be a love. I call it like you're definitely looking for this. I believe in honestly finding soulmate connections. Like, so even for myself, people say maybe dream client or your ideal client avatar or whatever the business terminology is. I'm like, no, there's a soulmate connection in a way. And I think it's because there's a love. Yep. Like, you have to feel like you have a sense of love, and it doesn't mean romantic love. I think when we say the words love, it's like there's a love. This person cares about you, because if someone cares, like if we think about even just people in our lives, it's not easy to have a tough conversation, but it's that love. It's that deep care. Yeah. And for me, even in my line, I see myself as a vision holder. So I'm always holding the pose for the bigger vision. So that maybe uncomfortable short-term moment, if it's going to open for the big vision, I'm with it, and someone who you feel like you can definitely trust. I think the trust and that love of like in your presence, I can be vulnerable, I think really matters.
Yeah. And what do you mean by the Empress lifestyle? What is this thing?
Oh, great question. So, I mean, honestly, it came through as anyone will quickly learn with me, I'm very intuitive this way, where I start getting downloads from my brand. It's like it happened when I first started my business, and the Empress was the same thing, where it just started coming through. It was like, Empress, okay. And what it is I see that there's this inner Empress that lives within us, and she is our most sovereign self. She just is completely embodied in her self-worth. It's an identity. And I realized that to actually connect with an identity is where all change happens. Like I noticed that, you can change your habits, you can change your rituals, you can change your environment, but it's our identities, I find, that define how we show up in the world. And so as an example, if you believe you're like an organized person, your habits, your rituals, the way you operate are different than if you're like, I'm disorganized, and there's kind of a different way you operate in the world. So with her, what I love is actually getting women to identify in themselves what is that legendary part of them? Because I believe we have our inner Empress and we have our human. We have the two. So it doesn't mean you always have to be on, which I think is for a lot of women what really intimidates is like this pressure of like, oh no, does this mean I always have to be on? Like, no, on your period, be on the couch, be in like the comfiest cozies, like drink, like eat the chocolate, like do your thing, have the tears, like let your human walk, but your Empress is who's walking with you. And I feel like something that one of my mentors shared at one stage is like, if you think about a lot of like the rock stars in the world, or these artists who go and like nail it, they're very connected to their legend. Yet their human oftentimes wasn't really well cared for. They weren't doing the inner work while they were out there doing it. And you can see that's always the stories of the artist that has the big fall. Yeah. And so I feel like it's really owning these two parts within you. But I think for so many of us women, by reclaiming and sitting into this Empress, she really is like that most embodied legendary, like she brings the magic to your space. And she's here to tell you what kind of leader you're here to be, who you're here to support, what your mission is. And then in terms of lifestyle, what I like is with that energy in place and aligned with your purpose, your unique vision, then you craft what is that world class? What is that high quality lifestyle that you truly want? And I think the biggest thing I love is with the Empress, I'm helping people to define it on their own terms. Because I think there's that classic quote of like, comparison is the thief of joy. I think as women, it just happens so often, especially with social media, where you don't even realize it, but it goes into the should path. You define yourself, or you think you're only, quote, successful, or you only have a beautiful life when you reach X metric. And I mean, even you and I as an example, both of us getting married this year, right? Those are one of those things that people feel like they'll have defined them in a way. Whereas this is like, figure out for yourself, what is that dream lifestyle? What is your big vision? And then from that, whether it's wealth, business, your career, your love life, we can map out like and design your lifestyle to really ensure that whatever you create in the world is really aligned with it.
Yeah. And how do you start women on this path of defining your purpose, solidifying your vision? What is the first step?
I love the somatic work. Like I definitely am someone who does a lot with visualization. I think so much of it is that somatic, like actually getting into even knowing what it feels like to be in your body with your Empress. Like I actually find that for a lot of women also, people don't realize that they struggle to desire. Like there's so much in us that says like, who am I to desire? Am I deserving of desire? So I find that there's even even before I say embodying the Empress, it's actually a little bit of that. Like we have to have a bit of a conversation about where the self-doubt plays out so strongly that you wouldn't even allow yourself to be in your body and feel her and feel that energy inside of yourself. So I feel like, you can see where self-doubt plays as an example. I notice a good way to explore this in inventory for anyone listening is your but statements. Like, I would love to start a business, but like, oh, I would love to go travel to Bali next year, but like there's these ways in which our self-sabotage comes in so fast and is so indoctrinated in us that we don't even allow desire. So I think the first step is you actually have to see how you even relate to desire. So you can allow then when you sit in your power of the inner Empress to actually be like, oh, this is me. But for many of us, there's actually a little bit of a step there in actually even allowing that part of yourself to be felt. I would imagine for you, even watching women as they're connecting to their bodies, I'm sure you see that moment that shifts when a woman like first comes in and, we all know we can move our bodies or exercise, but not be in our bodies. And there's a very specific difference when I watch her, where she feels her inner Empress, where like her energy, and you can't forget it. Yeah. And that's what I love, is it only takes a moment to have it, to then be like, oh, there's another part of me that just came online.
Yeah, it's something beautiful. It's something that I love to see happening with the ladies that I move with, and you see that shift and you see them tapping into that femininity, and it's still strong. This is the thing that is so important. Sometimes we associate femininity with a softness or almost a weakness, but there's still a strength in it. I see it so nicely in movement, where ladies, as they're getting stronger, they're tapping more into this femininity, and they become more free in their bodies and less in their heads. I really do see this, and it's really like quite a magical moment. So you speak about, would I say, protecting your energy, or seeing your energy as your biggest asset? Why? How? What is your energy? Is this a very abstract question?
No, it's great. So I honestly will stand behind that. I think energy is our greatest life and business asset. And I think in the world, there's a lot of fixation on money. There's a lot of fixation on time. That was a big one. I think is one I've watched a lot with a lot of us women. We're constantly feeling like it's something, you and I have spoken about before, but feeling like you're late. Yes. Or you're too far behind on something, or like we don't even realize how much scarcity plays out in our time awareness. Yet when you look in the world, there's so much fixation on time management, and like productivity is related to time. And I think time is very important because it is a finite resource. And I think as women, we have to honor that we energetically are created differently in certain ways. So like we're cyclical. For me, a big way I saw it was like this whole journey of even realizing that I have this 28-day cycle. I'm the lady who got on like birth control so young, didn't even have a connection to having a period, never thought of myself. And then I worked in very male-dominated spaces in tech in Silicon Valley, where it was like, only woman in the room. Like I was expected to be the same person every single day. And I would be so hard on myself if there was a day when I was tired, when in reality, I was probably on some part of my cycle where my energy levels were lower. Yeah. So for me, what I've really noticed as women is, and you would even see with movement, I would imagine, where there's times for women where actually it is an integrity and it's great for their whole body for them to do more movement or more strength training or more flexibility. And then there's other times where that actually would not be great for their energy levels. Like doing something like that would plummet their energy for the day and not work well. And so for me, it was this whole journey of realizing like, wait, I had this whole period where I was like the super type A. I was like, okay, I think I've got my time mapped out, and I just would feel like it wasn't working. Whereas what shifted me was when I realized if you actually can get connected to your energy and realize that if you are putting your energy in the places that matter most, if you realize that you actually can see your cycle, if that aligns with you, or like actually paying attention, that can make a huge difference. Like for me, one reclamation with my cycle was like, I didn't realize that when you're ovulating, that's a really good time to be doing things like podcasts. So even this week with you, perfect timing for me, because it's more of a time of being social. It's more a time when I naturally have more energy to give in this way. Whereas other times in my cycle, I'm like, I just want to reflect. And in business, as an example, like I just want to do more of my strategy work during this time. And so what I found is if you actually get aware of your energy and own it, one, we honestly have a higher bar for who we spend time with, like the things we spend money on, because all of these things are energy. Like money is energy in my books. Like the spaces you spend your time around, you start to have a lot higher bar for what you'll say yes and no to. Because I think a lot of us women, there's a lot about talking about people pleasing or the struggle to say no to things. I'm like, when you start to really honor your energy, it just becomes a byproduct. And it goes back to that identity thing. When you're owning your inner Empress, and with the inner Empress, I say she honors her energy. Then it's like you just don't make time for things that just don't align anymore. And I guess the biggest way, if I would just sum it in one phrase, is I am a firm believer that if you learn how to leverage your energy, that's how you'll maximize your time.
Oh, wow. This is so cool. I'm so, it's interesting because I feel like intuitively I've been discovering this year specifically. And somehow I've been more tapped into that and feeling, okay, today I'm actually quite tired. Like, this is not me just being lazy. Actually I'm down today, and actually I have energy today. The only thing that I would say kind of disappoints me a little bit is that life does not allow us to be that way, And I was listening to a podcast about, I'm just thinking about this topic that I'm about to bring up, but basically discussing like how tampons changed the way women function, and that we can keep doing everything that we normally do. And I started seeing how that is a good and a bad thing, because we're also pushing through things because we technically can, whereas usually that time when you're menstruating might be a time when you do less, you stay home. But now because we have this technology, which is great, I'm so grateful for it, also you feel like you don't have an excuse to be off today or to be quieter today. So that was something interesting that I that I recently found, and I kind of wish that our lifestyle could be more curated to where we are in our month, so we can do our best work when we're feeling our best, and we can be more gentle with ourselves when we need to. But I think for a lot of people, it's not really an option, which actually perfectly brings me into the next question that I wanted to talk to you about, which is, why is it important and why is it worth it to actually step into designing your world-class life, curating the life of your dreams, living life as you want to? Like, why? This is one benefit that I'm already thinking of. And why else? And why is it worth that? Because it's not easy. It's not always like an easy path to take. Let's say you're in a stable career, you don't hate it, but you don't love it. It's very hard to step out of that and say, actually, I'm going to start designing my dream life now.
I think as much as it's hard, I think we have to shift into being long-term thinkers. I think there's so much we're watching in this like obsessive instant gratification culture we're living in. And I think when it goes to wealth, when it goes to business success long-term, like if there's any shift, especially, and I think this is what women bring to the table. This is the feminine. We think long-term. We think about how the whole system functions together. And so I think when I look back, and like, for example, in my career, for many, it was, what the heck are you doing? Because I had this stable, good paying salary working with the boss that everyone was like, why would you ever leave that? The consistent pressure and the consistent numbing of my passion and my purpose that I had to constantly fight against every day to go to work was exhausting. And I think many women can relate to that. As much as we think it's like comfortable and it's cozy and you like have the things and you're doing it, it's actually exhausting every day to kind of constantly dim yourself down and constantly like try to put yourself into a box that doesn't feel authentic in some ways. Like maybe some parts of it are. I think there's always some parts, but like we're here to be fully expressed women, to like create legacies, to make changes in the world. And honestly, our time is now. Like it's like there's no waiting around for someone else to do the thing. Like I have no patience for this like complaining culture of, I'm like, what are you doing about it? Yeah. Like, call out what's like problems, but then like how are you being a solution creator? Yeah. Like what is how are you stepping into the arena and actually trying to make the change? And so I think as much as there is that short term shifting, or maybe you're misunderstood by people, as I was a lot, or you have to sacrifice in the sense of like, you're going to have to put your investments into your growth. And maybe not, for me, I look back and like, I didn't drink for a while because I didn't want to spend the money and spend things. I had other things I wanted to prioritize. And, you have to kind of go through that. But I find that like, if you can realize like the greatest gift you can give to anyone else in your life is you being in deepest alignment and truth. Because what you don't realize is you open up doors for so many other people to do the same. Yeah. So I think it's like whether you're a mother or you're a sibling or a daughter, like you can't change anybody. You can't change the world just by like telling them what to do or any of that. Like as much as I think all of us at some stage have gone through that journey of realizing, the greatest thing you can do for anyone in the world, honestly, I think is designing your life based on your truth, your unique purpose. So for me, when I think about this, it's not that mine is the same as yours, Taz, because we both were brought here with very unique missions, unique purposes. And so we need different resources. We're going to value our bodies differently for various things we need, or travel, whatever it may be. Yet the more you can be as honest as possible about who you're here to be, the more you're actually going to, I think, get to experience the aliveness of living on a deeper level. And I think for a lot of people, when you're in that settling, you don't feel very alive a lot of the time. No. You feel like you're there, but if you really notice it, it does feel like it's like you're kind of half there. Whereas like you came here to live a fully awake life in a way. And yes, it is an act of courage. So I'll definitely call it out to your point. It's an act of courage to design your life and to like have that intention and to prioritize it in this world that often tells you just follow this plan. If you follow this plan, you'll be successful. And just depends on what you care about. And are you going to be someone who's willing to like go in there and put yourself and your legacy and your big why first?
Yeah. And it's always difficult sometimes you have to really listen to your inner voice. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're like, am I being delusional right now? Like, is everyone else right and I'm being delusional? So it's always a tricky thing. You have to tap into your intuition. And then sometimes, again, feedback that people are giving you is helpful. And sometimes you are being a bit delusional. Yes. So also tricky to get that balance, but definitely worth it. I agree. Like, my main mission is to like live the life of my dreams. As uncomfortable as it can be at times, it's definitely worth it. So yeah, I hope that more people are starting to do this. I feel like more people are, and just kind of push through that little bit of discomfort, like Joe Dispenza calls it, I think, the river of change. When you're crossing the river, you just imagine this current taking you, but it's worth it at the end. And then I wanted to talk about finance. Who doesn't want to talk about finance? What do you see? You were speaking earlier about women struggle to allow themselves to desire certain things. And I think that this is also with wealth, financial wealth, I mean, specifically. And so what do you see as the major hurdle that stops us? I want to say specifically as women, maybe men deal with this too, but I guess I'm speaking from a more personal point here. What stops us from reaching financial freedom or financial independence, or whether it's getting the salary you want to get, whatever it is? Like, sometimes it's difficult to get there. What do you see as stopping us?
Well, I think you have to just first take, like, one of my feminine leadership principles is like, you have to take radical responsibility for your life, which as women, we've been kind of told, be in the background. You know, for many, there's like someone else is going to save you. The damsel in distress, constant fairy tale that we've all been fed from a young age. So there's kind of that first reclamation of like, wait. If I'm unhappy in any capacity of my life, and this goes back to the lifestyle design, it's on me. Like, there's no more kind of blaming all these things or circumstances. Like, okay, all right. Like, can I first just be like, wait, I can make a change. Then I think the biggest one there is like, who am I to want wealth? You know, for a lot of women, it's like, and my big thing is, who are you not to? Because there is so much wealth in this world, and yet we look and go, oh yeah, okay, that person has it. Who are you not to be? Like, think about all the things you would create in the world if you had it. Like, all the people you could change, the ways you could impact your family, the ways you could make change in your communities, the way you could just do so many things with it. And so I think it's that concept of like, who am I to want it? And shifting that into who am I not to? Like, what if it works? Like, because then I think it's then that also that dynamic of like fear of failure of what if I go out? There's funny with fear, there's like I feel like there's always the duality. So I think a big one with us women is the fear of failure and the fear of success. Yes. Play out a lot. So there's that self-sabotage, which will be, oh man, like, what if I fail? What if like people see me fall? What if I make mistakes? What if I'm not perfect? And in leadership, we've really got to let go of this perfection notion. There's so much pressure, you see it especially on women, of like, oh no. And if you watch how we even speak as women, we have a responsibility to watch how we uplift other women while they're going through moments of like, wow, she really stepped in. She did that thing. And no, it wasn't perfect. And she's showing up again. She keeps going. Like, there's a way we have to show that like there's success, and that we women as leaders don't have to be perfect. Like, there's going to be areas of her mastery and her legendary side, and there's areas where she's always growing, because we're humans. It's the human side. And then I think the other big one on that same front is with wealth. It's like, you just got to be someone. For a lot of women, they don't want to look at money. They don't want to talk about money. We do not talk about money. I have realized, I was laughing thinking about like on my spiritual journey at this point, I've been in so many women's circles where I feel fortunate that I've been in these vulnerable spaces where we'll talk about relationship stuff, health related things. And now it's kind of one of my missions I'm noticing even in my business is like, I want to create spaces where we actually talk about money. Because I notice even with my friends, they talk to me about it, because we have to get rid of the shame. Yeah. Men talk about it. You hear a men, and I saw it all the time in my previous job life and corporate space, like men talk about it. Oh, I made that investment and blah, blah, blah happened. And they talk about it in all sorts of ways, whereas like, unless we're willing to talk about it, that's why I think a lot of our salaries, the problem with like negotiation issues, like women just don't, I never knew where a lot of my friends were at salary wise. So I never had a comparison. So I think it's getting rid of the shame. And the last thing I'll say is I think the beliefs, we've got to see what you've been conditioned into through your family, through what you've witnessed. Like a lot of people have the, you know, rich people are bad, right? Or a big one in my family was, oh, money that you worked really hard for is good money. Yeah. And any money that comes with more ease is bad money, you know? And so it's like, you've got to just kind of give yourself grace and space. And with feminine love, go in and just notice, like, what are the emotions you hold? Because then when we kind of get to that place, that's when we can go into the whole receiving mode. And I have all sorts of rituals. I love this topic. We could go into so much on this, but I love all these topics about it because I think it's so important. It's a huge part. If we're going to really watch us women as feminine leaders really stand up and be these pioneers of change in a lot of ways, we've got to honor that wealth is a key part of how we can make the change.
And would you agree that a lot of people will see something like spirituality and finance as two very opposite sides of the scale, and you can't be very spiritually inclined and financially driven? I see this as a belief system that shows up, and I disagree with it. I think they all come together. So you've experienced this as well. Why do we feel that way, first of all?
I think it's kind of part of the journey. Like, you kind of rebel. I think you kind of go from like one extreme almost to the next. And it's kind of a way where, if you were in a very like capitalist or like money driven society, then you kind of go and you meet spirituality. And there's a lot in that conversation of like, we care about people. We don't need money to be happy. Yet I think then it's like you go on this other extreme, which for many isn't also completely aligned and in integrity. For some people, it probably is, but for many, it's not. It's finding that healthy balance of, and this is why I'm big on getting clear on your unique purpose, your unique lifestyle, because for one person, they may need millions of dollars because for their specific mission, that's what is going to be the key for them. Whereas for someone else, that's not aligned. And I also think with a lot of clients who even come my way who are like, okay, I want to have $1 million year or whatever the story is, it's like, okay, and let's ensure for some it's deeply aligned, and for others it may not be. Like, okay, you have all these other things in your life. Do you want to like let your health go this year? It's like, what are you really willing, like what does actual sovereign success look like? If you're not, I'm not here to have you just go for like the ego driven pursuits. Like, I'm really for like, what is the truth of who you're here to be? And the last thing I'll say on that is we have to also, a big belief is like, you don't make money doing what you love. So I think that's where the spirituality gets confused, as people start to like tap into their natural talents and gifts and kind of connect to that part of themselves, and things are actually quite easeful. And then they think, I can't possibly be paid for this. And whereas, funny enough, but obviously a big belief that's rooted in that is hard work is, the way you make money. And so there's multiple things. I think it's many things. And the last thing I'll say, also surrounding yourself with people who think differently. I think you've got to find your I kind of call it like possibilitarians. Like, I've always seen myself as a pioneer of possibility for people in my life and my family and stuff. It's like, okay, I don't have to be understood because I'm like paving a new path. And all I'm doing is allowing others, if they want to join in their own version, their own way of like, here's another path of possibility. So you've got to surround yourself with people who I also think differently and who open new perspectives. So that way you can actually expand into new awareness.
Okay. I also love talking about finance because I think it's an area of life. It's not good or bad. And like you say, for some people it's more aligned. For some people it's not. That's okay. Sometimes you need the money to do the vision. You need to make more money to execute your vision more. Do you experience that somebody's self-worth is directly related to how they feel about finance and money?
It just came through as you were saying that. Yes. I think a lot of people, yes, no. I think a lot of people define themselves and are hard on themselves because they do link self-worth and money together. Whereas I don't do that. I think you innately, your self-worth, you are always whole. You are always complete. You are already the masterpiece. Money is just this tool to create. It's an incredible tool for creating your artistry in the world, for sharing, it's a currency. So I find that where the difference though is not in self-worth, but in self-belief. So I think I never want to pass like this idea, because I've watched this go around a lot too, of like, oh, I can see someone's self-worth based on what's the money in their bank account. And I'm like, there's many things in that. I just do think it's important as women, we really see that our self-worth is not defined by any of those metrics. We have to have that wholeness. The greatest gift you can give to anyone else in your life is you being in deepest alignment and truth. Because what you don't realize is you open up doors for so many other people to do the same. So I think it's like, whether you're a mother or you're a sibling or a daughter, like, you can't change anybody. You can't change the world just by like telling them what to do or any of that. Like, as much as I think all of us at some stage have gone through that journey of realizing, the greatest thing you can do for anyone in the world, honestly, I think, is designing your life based on your truth, your unique purpose. So for me, when I think about this, it's not that mine is the same as yours, Taz, because we both were brought here with very unique missions, unique purposes. And so we need different resources. We're going to value our bodies differently for various things we need, or travel, whatever it may be. Yet the more you can be as honest as possible about who you're here to be, the more you're actually going to, I think, get to experience the aliveness of living. on a deeper level. And I think for a lot of people, when you're in that settling, you don't feel very alive a lot of the time. Yeah. You feel like you're there, but if you really notice it, it does feel like it's like you're kind of half there. Whereas like you came here to live a fully awake life in a way. And yes, it is an act of courage. So I'll definitely call it out to your point. It's an act of courage to design your life and to like have that intention and to prioritize it in this world that often tells you just follow this plan. If you follow this plan, you'll be successful. And you know, just depends on what you care about. And are you going to be someone who's willing to like go in there and put yourself and your legacy and your big why first? Deep sense of gratitude of yes, like that's going to bring so much abundance, like, and tune into all the energies of what it's going to create in your life. And then it's amazing how different the energetics with money is. Money's like, yes, hello. I am much more, and it could come to that. The big thing with the beliefs work is it could come from various ways. Yeah. Because that's the other thing is like, if you have that good bad, you might just be like, oh, unless I do it in my business. Yeah. Whereas maybe you'll go and have another random surprise and make money somewhere else, you know? Yeah, so it's,
And earlier you sort of started talking about, I'm not sure if you said rituals or routines around finance. Mm-hmm. Say more.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I love it. So for example, one that I, especially as a business owner, anyone in life, I recommend this is like, because we're here to have a relationship with money. Money wants to feel seen. It wants to feel respected. It wants to know that you're paying attention. So for example, in my business, I have this ritual where anytime I receive money from a client, someone who buys one of my programs, anything, I actually have it starred in my inbox. So that way I can take a moment and celebrate it. And actually have a moment of like, thank you. This is going to go to creating things for me and my fiance. This is going to go to creating my life this way. This is going to go to my team members. This is going to go to creating more content in the world. Like I actually feel it and have gratitude. And then even when I pay people, I do the same thing. And I think about who it's going to, like what it's going to create in their lives. I think about like all that it's going to support for them and their big dreams and their own initiatives. So I find that's one that's really powerful is like, because I think a lot of people when they spend money, they have this energy a lot of like, you know, like, oh no, and you feel the lack. Yeah. Whereas the moment, like I'm very big on always tuning into the attraction, like the abundance attraction frequency. And so I find that if we see what I just did there was instead of being like, oh no, I'm paying money, it's like, I am abundant, I have plenty, and this is going to go and circulate and create the currency that money is here for. Money is an energetic currency. And so that's one of my favorites. I think a great ritual is I just honestly believe for anyone to be a good tipper, I think is really important. Really? I think,
As in when you get good service or just generally?
In general, but I think obviously then when you see someone who stands out, I just think when you're someone who pays attention to people in that space, there's a difference to how you operate. And even in times when I had less, I noticed that like those are the moments when it was the most important to really see people and to be super in deep gratitude for them showing up. I think tipping is a really interesting one for people to even play with and watch. There's so many. I mean, then it's like, you know, whether it's having your abundance tracker and having a ritual where every month you actually pay attention. I think for a lot of women, it can be very natural to not know what's going on in their finances. Yeah. Whereas if you actually have visibility, then you can actually be aware of like, whoa, okay, this is how it's moving. And honestly, one big thing is I think having a regular cleanup. Go pay attention to like, you might have subscriptions that you've subscribed to. And each of those, because money is energy, it's an energy leak in your life. So it's like, okay, maybe it's happening financially, but it's also like all these energy leaks of things that you're spending money on. And what I also find is when you go through that process of inventorying where you're spending your money, as a business owner, this is really powerful just because you won't realize like the random softwares or random things that you are, you know, noticing. But the more you do that, you also get to watch like where your energy is being spent and where you're investing it. Yeah. So like for me, I notice now because I've like been doing this for a long time, and I feel very aligned because when I see mine, most of mine is related to personal and professional development. A lot of it's related to health because those are are like creating experiences with my friends and travel. But those are things that I really care about. Whereas there was definitely times where I had to be like, wait, why is so much of my money going to these things that honestly I don't actually care about? Yeah. And so it's interesting. You get to actually see where you're prioritizing.
And I think it's also a nice way to link what we spoke about in the beginning, where you said you start with where you are. Mm-hmm. It's always good to go see where am I spending my money, because probably it is on priorities already. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a few things where you want to tighten up, but naturally you will find money for the things that are important to you. Yep. So that's also a really easy way to literally go and look at where are you spending your money. That's probably where your life is at, what you're already clearly prioritizing, even if it's on a subconscious level. Mm-hmm.
And with that, a fun reframe is instead of saying, I can't afford it, how can I afford it? And just tuning into that alone will shift things, because then it always shifts you out of that, like, oh no, can't, into that, how can I afford it? And just like allowing that creativity. I think that's a big thing for a lot of us women as well, to create. It's creating wealth. Yeah. It's not, I don't even really say making it. I always say creating it, because you need that creativity, and it shows up in fun, different ways in different places, and you can have fun surprises.
Yeah, I love that question. Did you say, how can you afford it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How can I afford it? Yeah.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I also learned this question, how can I get paid to do this? So that when I find something I love, I'll just ask myself that question. I don't expect to get an answer immediately, but I start trying to think, like, how could I get paid to do this? And it doesn't always end up in a profit, I wouldn't say, but sometimes there could be a collaboration, there could be an energy exchange. And just by asking that question, putting it into your mind, sometimes it just comes to you. I have experienced that, and it's quite beautiful.
Oh, so that's a beautiful question, because that also helps with the whole, you can make money doing what you love. Yeah. And it'll help also people to realize with passions, if you can disconnect from like, oh no, I have to have X outcome right away. Instead, what I feel in that is you're tuned into such an abundance possibility frequency, which is like, I'm just going to do it because I'm going to enjoy it. And then I can also make money while doing it. And then who knows? It could plant a seed that has all these opportunities that you'll never know yet until you start it. Yeah.
And how do you deal with someone who comes to you and says they have this idea for a new business or side hustle, but they really don't have the finance to even start it? How do we start something? Like, sometimes you really do not have that finance.
I mean, what's amazing about today's world is there's so much free content, and there's so much to offer. And if you're someone who's just really willing to put yourself out there and do it, it's really a matter of like prioritizing it. And so even for myself, like, I mean, a lot of my content, I give so much free content. And that's what I love about the world right now, is there's actually a lot that you can have access to. It's just a matter of, are you putting it in? So for me, in those situations, I usually just say like, okay, what are your first steps? What's the intention? And like, I'll usually, like, I also think if you're someone who's willing to also go and search, there's often scholarship spots or sponsorship spots, and people are looking for, like, for me, I'm always watching for the energy someone's about to put in. And if they're like ready and they're in that, like, I'm going to show up, you'd be surprised how many people will find ways to support in those moments. And there's something about that initiation of just watching even the free content and finding ways to like just show you're going to prioritize yourself in that there's something really beautiful about that. But I think they're in the best time ever to actually have some of those resources for free online.
Yeah, for sure. Something else that I wanted to speak to you about, because I feel you do it well, is social media. And I think it is somewhere that a lot of small business owners or startup entrepreneurs, they get really caught up in this. It becomes very stressful. It moves out of that creative space. It becomes a task. It becomes burnout material. And again, I think that you do it very well in your own brand. So what is your advice around social media platforms, content creation? Tell us.
Yes. So for me, I look at the first step, which brand story, like we covered earlier, plays into this, is what creates a magnetic brand. So like, I'm not interested, like, and I say this lovingly because I have gone on that entire path of literally doing everything based on even like business coaches I've had in the past telling me like, this is the platform where you should do this, and you need to post X amount of times a day, and you need to do this whole system. Whereas I found like, we're all different. We're all beautifully and energetically unique. So in my work, I definitely have processes where we look at what are like your actual energetics, and I have different tools I love to use for that. For me, as the example, right, I just got to really know, so I look at, there's like 3 big components. There's your brand story. So knowing your brand story is a really powerful way to create powerful content. So for me, like my story, it's the thing that connects to people. It's the thing that really is your wisdom. It's the teaching with the experience. Then I think it's knowing your natural talents and gifts are super important. So that way you can really honor, like, I love to speak. I am someone like who enjoys video. I enjoy, as we've seen on Instagram, I like to be kind of silly and playful, and I get to show my various facets in that way. And then, so I found knowing my natural talents and gifts, I optimize more for that type of content because I know that's what I enjoy more, and that's where I like naturally express myself. I do a mix, but I find that I naturally go more for that. And then the third is what I call the Empress essence, which is your unique energy. So like really owning, like, what is, like, I always think of it as like your Instagram as an example. I'm just using Instagram because that's kind of the main platform that I'm currently playing with at this time. I see it as my own little energetic community, and it's my energetic footprint. So when I think about what I want my Empress essence and what I would ask to anybody is like, if someone comes across your content, any piece of content you ever create or anything from your brand, how do you want it to make them feel? And like that energy is so key, because then anytime you're creating content, like you tune into that frequency, and it should honestly be you. Like in a lot of ways, it's actually quite simple because it's your natural essence. It's who you are. Yeah. And so I feel like the reason because I've had the shift for sure. I've gone through the full journey with social media where I feel like for a long time, I feel like I tried so hard to figure out social media. And then funny enough, when I stopped trying and finally just was like, I'm here to be I see myself as an artist. And like, I'm here to create art and create things in my own way. And so the moment I was like, I'm just going to enjoy, you have to know like what your mission is and what you're standing for, just so there's like an energy of like, where's your focus? Yeah. And that strategy helps. So you're not just like, I talk about anything and everything. Yeah. That's why your brand story is helpful. And then I find though, that if you can then be in that energy, then it's like, you get to just let all your content just be this fun, creative expression of who you are and what wants to come through. And people can feel it. Like that was our conversation you and I had where you were like, oh, that makes sense. Like you actually really enjoy it. Yeah. I was like, I love making reels. Yeah. So like for me, I feel like it's not a coincidence that was an area of content that really has done well for me. Cause I do believe in energetics so deeply. People can feel that. You can feel when someone like really had to work hard to do something and they're not really wanting to. And you can feel it in any expression, like your podcast, because you can see that your heart is so in this creation experience. We're going to feel it. It just naturally makes us all much more engaged and interested because your frequency is there. Whereas like if you're doing something that doesn't really excite you that much, it doesn't have that same magnetism. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. And I think also, again, much easier said than done, but not falling into the comparison situation. And then also trying, I'm speaking to myself here, okay? But this is trying to not get attached to the outcome. If you want to create something, create it, put it out there. Don't be attached. Don't think it was a failure if, it didn't go viral, if it didn't get a response. You need to be doing it authentically. You need to want to do it anyway. Yeah. And then maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't, but you wanted to do it anyway. But as I say, I'm speaking to myself here.
And I think we spoke about this a bit earlier. It's like, you have to choose. Like I tried every platform. Like there was a period where I had gotten the advice, like be on Clubhouse, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I don't even know. I feel like I've done all of them, which I think was part of my journey. So that way I could even be in this moment with you and say, it doesn't work. You don't have to do that. Yeah. Like literally find the place that you just enjoy. And it's like what we said is like, I think of the artist who makes a painting. Their greatest joy isn't in the last minute when the painting's done. Like their greatest, or everyone's affirmation of their painting, like they enjoyed the process of painting the piece. And so it's like, to your point, that's what's helped me reframe with the analytics thing where, you're like, oh no, that seemed to do well, must do this. What did you just naturally enjoy the process? Because we also don't know who's actually watching a lot of the time. So, different pieces of content have different purposes in a way. And so if you're just so driven by the next trend, you may be missing out on people who are like really desiring more of your intimacy or some other part of you that they don't get to really feel into. So
that is so helpful. I feel like I could speak to you about so many things for the rest of the day, but I won't do that to you. Before we wrap up with my final question, earlier you were talking about these rituals around finance and abundance, which I loved. So what are the other routines you have to help women lead from their feminine energy and create their vision?
Yes. Oh, I love this. So I don't see, one of my biggest reclamations was realizing I would struggle so long with this whole obsession with habits. So probably with the whole time management thing too. Yeah. I need things to be things that I really buy into, because I've learned with myself, if I believe and I care about it, it will, as you said, it'll happen. Yeah. We put energy where we want to. And so for me, as an example, I find that the word discipline didn't resonate. I was trying so hard. Again, even this discipline on content, I must post 5 times, whatever it was, I thought I wasn't a disciplined person. I was struggling to I would beat myself up all the time because I was wait. And I realized that frequency wasn't aligned. Whereas in the feminine energy, I feel like I'm a very devoted person. Like, so I've really learned that if I'm not in this like disciplined, because to me, discipline's very heady and very like masculine, and I kind of have to like go and I've got to hit the metrics. Whereas the moment I sat back and was like, I lead from my feminine, like I really know this is what actually creates the art I want to share. It creates my impact. I really connected to being like, wait, I'm a devoted person. Like I really am someone, when I'm devoted to something, people feel it. I'm present that way. And so instead of even habits, I believe in rituals. Like I love ritual. And like for me, that is what excites my system. And so for me, I feel like the biggest one for a lot of us women is, how do you start your day? Because I think a lot of what happens, especially for a lot of women, a lot of moms, a lot of people who have a lot of other people who have a lot of expectations from them, your morning ritual, okay, yeah, YouTube, you can go YouTube a million different morning rituals. And I think there's no perfect morning ritual. I think it's really finding what will be deeply aligned with you. I mean, I have a morning ritual. You can send me a message and I can share something if it gives you even just something to respond off of, but I think there's something about how you start your day. So even for me, like a practice, and I actually do it with my fiance sometimes too. Actually, he actually initiated this morning, is like a little bit of gratitude right when we wake up. And it just, even that is feminine in a way, like just starting the day of like, and it'll just be sweet. And I think even if you have a partner, bring your partner into the rituals too. Because as much as we're talking about women, like men are also craving a lot of this feminine, like connecting to their feminine in a way, like that energy. Yeah. And so I feel like for me, it's like a biggest one is like, really, how do I start my day? Creating space and not rush first thing in my morning has been very important to me. Finding what works for me in that way. So that way I can not just like go on my phone and feel like I'm now at the whims of everybody else or my business or everyone else's needs. But you have to start your day like in deep divine connection with your feminine. I feel like there is this knowing that it's the classic phrase of like, you have to fill your cup up first. Yet I think it really is that like, today I'm going to design my day. So setting some time to actually have an intentional start to your day, actually planning like what is going to be the most important thing for me to focus on today. And just like, I always think if you can even check in with your body, check in with your mind, set an intention of who you want to be in your day. So maybe it's focused, maybe it's soft, maybe it's playful, and then have one empowered action that is like your most important thing for the day. That if like that's the thing that gets done or that's the thing, like that's it.
Enough, yeah.
And that for me just shifted it all. It's simple. I'm very into simplicity, not overcomplicated. I don't think business needs to be complicated. I don't think our lives need to be complicated. I think a lot wants to tell us it is. So that way we don't design ourselves and design our lives.
Oh, I just love that. All right. So my last question for you. What does it mean to you to live a world-class life? And I ask all my guests this.
To me, it really means being deeply aligned with my purpose. So for me, it's being someone who is paving new paths of possibility for others. It's someone who comes here and lives my life present and who honors that like the way that I'm going to see the changes I wish to see in the world is through me stepping up and showing up for it and doing my part in that and opening up doors and inspiring others to do the same. For me, it's also like owning that I'm here to be wealthy in whatever way that means. And to me, wealth doesn't just have to be money. It has to do with how I relate to my body. It has to do with how I spend time with my relationships. But to me, I would say a world-class life to me is really doing it on my own terms more than anything.
I love that. I think that's very much similar to how I define it. And then how can people, I love everything we've spoken about today. This has been so valuable for me and I'm sure for the audience. Thank you for going deeply into these different topics. And I feel like there's even way more, but this was really, really nice. So how can people connect with you if they want to do more, if they want to connect on a deeper level with you?
Come DM me on Instagram. I'll keep it simple. Instagram's the place.
Okay.
Come find me on Instagram, DM me. And if for some reason I feel like Instagram DMs these days, it can be a little funny where things get lost there. So comment on something and tell me you DM'd me. Please, with me, see me as someone who's here to really would love to have a deep, meaningful conversation. I'd love to know you. I'd love to be a vision holder in your life. And I think we're really going to make some big changes together. So please find me there. That's the best place.
All right. And then some of the offerings that you have, how can people work with you?
So I always think it's helpful just to give a free offering mainly of, I have a free masterclass you can take that is really about how to turn your passion into a prosperous business. And even if you have a business, I think it's impactful because it'll give you some tidbits on maybe areas where some of us started businesses but didn't have some of these like intentions or foundations that you'll see in that. That's really, really awesome. I also do have a free quiz. You can DM me if you want to know. It's the success saboteurs I mentioned earlier. So to see which of them are playing out and how you can start to connect to your inner Empress. And then the last one I'll share is for anyone who's here in South Africa or wants to come to South Africa. I have teamed up with 2 incredible, powerful other Empresses here in South Africa. We've created an initiative called the Wealthy Women Collective. And so we have retreats that we run every year, and there's some other big missions, and it's all related to redefining and reclaiming wealth as women, with a big mission on like really making a stand here on the African continent in particular.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for dedicating your life to this. I think you impact a lot of women already, and you will impact a lot more. And thank you for your time here today. So I hope people do reach out and make contact, because I know that you have so much more to share. And maybe we will do this again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for what you're doing in the world, for starting this, initiating this incredible podcast, and all of the conversations that are going to be started here, all the listeners who get to have the wisdom of what you share, and not just what you say, but in who you are, and for showing up and designing your life every day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
See you soon.